While I try not to begrudge anyone who chooses to be a movie-only fan and not read the books, it's difficult for those of us who have read the Hunger Games series to not notice all the differences and annoy you by pointing them out. Now, to the major credit of the creators of the films, there aren't that many massive changes. Not ones that are bothersome anyway. Other than how Katniss got the Mockingjay pin in the first film, most changes are understandable when you consider how vastly different these two forms of media are, books versus films. But what about those little things that, while the creators manage to sneak them in, unless you've read the specifics about that thing, concept, character, or what have you, movie-only fans may completely miss, at least upon a first viewing. My mom, Geek Mom, came to stay with my husband and I recently to help us transition into parenthood with the birth of our first child. As Baby Geek ended up being a week late, my mom and I were killing time. This led to her showing me YouTube videos of, well, YouTubers, reacting to different films, particularly the Hunger Games series. During this time, she and I both noticed that there were several moments throughout the series that, across the board, these first-time viewers who hadn't read the books completely missed or didn't fully understand or realize the significance of. Which leads me to the point of this video. I'm going to list off for each film important things that most movie-only fans seem to miss. Be sure to comment below afterwards if you missed any of these as well, or if there's anything I missed. With that, let's get to the list. When Katniss's mom and sister come to see her right before she's taken to the capital, Katniss tells Prim something that, unless you're really paying attention, you may miss. She tells her,
"Don't take any extra food from them. It isn't worth putting your name in more times."
Why? What does that mean? Tesserae, it's called. In exchange for a small amount of food, your name gets entered for the reaping more times, and you can do this several times throughout the year. Further, and you wouldn't know this without the books, it's cumulative. That's why Gale has his name in so many times. He's been doing this for his family of 5 since he was about 14 or 15, getting food for himself, his mom, his 2 little brothers, and his little baby sister. Katniss likewise also has her name in too many times to count. Harsh, isn't it? And cruel as it preys on the most poor and vulnerable. This one wasn't across the board, but often enough, people miss the fact that Haymitch is a victor of the games and don't pick up on it until catching fire. They mistakenly believe he's from the capital, when actually he's played these Horde games before. Long ago. Victors become mentors. If you happen to watch Ballad of Songbirds and Snake first, this is even more confusing, as Capital students were mentors in that one. So, in Haymitch's case, ever since his late teens, he has watched 2 kids from his home die a brutal death every year. Kids he tried to help, to, well, mentor. At least at first. With this in mind, it's understandable why he's turned out the way he has, not caring and drowning his depression in spirits. Actually, you could argue it's because he does care that he drinks so much. It's not until Peeta and Katniss show some semblance of a possibility of winning, remember most kids in 12 that get picked are skin and bones starving, not good candidates for winning, that he begins to turn things around. Still, even then he has to fight past his trauma. This leads me to my next point, though a small one. Right here, Haymitch actually rejects the offer of more alcohol. This subtle gesture by actor Woody Harrelson speaks volumes about where the character is at. He is so focused on helping Katniss and Peeta, so motivated by their strength, that he doesn't need or want the numbing sensation right then and there. I've heard a few say Haymitch seems a little too harsh on Katniss at the end, grilling her about how to act and how the Capitol will react. Not because he's not right, but because they think he wouldn't know that much. What you don't realize, and frankly book fans may not realize at first either, is this is because he's been in Katniss's position. We learn in the second book what he did in the games. Similar to Katniss, he essentially mocked the Capitol and the game makers. And in the third book, we learn how Snow retaliated, basically making an example out of him for the rest of the victors to come. That's why he's so hard on Katniss. She showed them up. She and those she loves are in great danger, and he would know from brutal personal experience. If you'd like a more in-depth video and answers to questions about Haymitch, click on the card up here after this video is finished. It's been gaining more traction recently, and I think that has something to do with the new prequel book that's coming out next year. This was something book fans were incredibly relieved by, though it is a small change. Buttercup, Prim's cat, is described as apparently being the color he's named after. Yet, in the first film, he's anything but. So, early on in Catching Fire when Katniss walks by him here, we were quite happy to see they recast him. Some reactors thought maybe Prim had two cats, or that this cat was just a random one, until he appears more later on. This one was crazy to both my mom and I how many didn't pick up on it. When the victors/tributes do their individual moments with the game makers, Katniss walks in, going past Peeta, and sees Rue how she laid her to rest painted on the floor. So many reactors thought the game makers did that to egg her on. No! Peeta just had his time, and he's a painter. Put the pieces together and you realize Peeta did it. And he did it to remind them that they are responsible for a little girl's death. Now, I may not be fair in my judgment on this. The thing is, in the book, Katniss had to wait to go in because they actually cleaned it up. Katniss only finds out what Peeta did later when they are all together. Her and Peeta, their stylist, Haymitch, Effie, and they're discussing it. Bonus fact, because they left it out of the films, Katniss and Peeta were given scores of 12, the highest you can get. Why? To make them clear targets. Another one that wasn't everyone, but a majority of those I watched, not seeing Effie's character change. At least, not until Mockingjay, if at all. Many look at how Effie acts in Catching Fire and took it as her being vain, upset that she finally had victors and now she won't get to relish in their glory anymore since they'll probably be dead. But this isn't so. Of course, you hear more from her in the books and Katniss's feelings about her, but even just in the films, I think it's clear that Effie is grappling. She's capital, that's clear as day. But she's genuinely upset and disturbed by this turn of events. And that's key, not just being upset, but disturbed. She has many flaws, but this was the start of her slowly realizing the depravity of her people, her social groups, and so-called friends. You need no further proof than the night before the Quarter Quell, when she's in tears after calling the four of them, Katniss, Peeta, Haymitch, and herself, a team. She chokes and says,
"Well, you both deserved so much better. I am truly sorry."
She's getting it, but she knows the cruelty of the Capitol. Even if she didn't realize how wrong it was before, she's aware that there's only so much she can say before she gets in trouble. Again, some of this is understandable to miss considering how much more in-depth the book was, though the films did do great. So many conversations where we see Effie isn't a total airhead, but there is one thing I would have loved to have seen or read. Effie's face when Snow announced the Quarter Quell. Imagine it. She was probably at some fancy party, and the moment it dawned on her, her heart must have sunk. Sure, those around her may have been bummed out about losing their precious victors whom they treat as little trophies, but my guess is Effie's head was reeling as she was fighting to save face and pretend not to be angry about this. I don't know if people didn't notice this as much as they didn't comment on it, but in the beginning of Mockingjay Part 1, Katniss is fiddling a pearl in her fingers. That pearl is, of course, the pearl Peeta gave her during the Quarter Quell. But it's not just there. We see other moments where she does this. It's a nice detail they put in that was from the book. Katniss constantly messing with it, even touching it to her lips and thinking of Peeta. Okay, I didn't even notice this one, but Geek Mom pointed it out to me. When Katniss goes back to the Victor's village, the only thing left standing in District 12, only her side of houses is still there, not Peeta's and not Haymitch's. Odd, right? Like I said, this is something I missed as well since it's not a detail from the book, but added in the film. While Boggs is supposed to come off as Coin's loyal lackey, We all know he's more than that. He's incredibly kind towards Katniss and wants the best for her. We see in this conversation between him and Katniss that he's admitting to some shady things about Coin. However, it's when he's moments from death that he basically admits that he doesn't trust Coin either. It's not super direct, so I understand why most don't comment on this, but I think it's clear that's part of what he's trying to convey to Katniss. Many seem to miss who takes the place of Coin following Katniss's rebellious arrow. Haymitch says when reading Plutarch's letter that he has no doubt Commander Paylor will win, and later we see her being sworn in. For some, they miss that she was voted in, others don't realize who she is. She was the commander they met on the ground of District 8 before the hospital got bombed, and the woman who made the speech after Katniss snuck her way out of District 13. Clearly a much better choice than either Snow or Coin. This isn't something visual people missed, but something conceptual. And, to be fair, Katniss flat out says it in the book. When you really think through it, Katniss's little sister Primrose has gone through so much more than Katniss did at that age. In the final book, Prim is 14 years old. For Katniss, when she was 14, she had lost her dad in a mine explosion, watched her mom mentally fade away, suffer severe starvation, and had been through 2 reapings. Prim went through all of that, minus 1 reaping, plus having her name called, watching her sister volunteer in her place, watch her sister go through the Hunger Games twice, have her home bombed to the ground, be transported to a completely new location she didn't think even existed, and be in the front lines for a war, ultimately leading to her death. That is quite a lot for 14. The reason Katniss brings this up in the book is because she's shocked by how grown Prim seems, but with all of this in mind, it makes sense. She was forced to grow up, just like Katniss was. Suzanne Collins is very specific with the names she chooses, but honestly, some of them you wouldn't realize the significance of unless you knew some Roman and Greek history or mythology. Like the fact that Seneca was a playwright and wrote the most gory and terrifying plays. And Seneca Crane is the head game maker in the first book. Makes sense. You know who was related to him in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? Arachne Crane. At least, we assume so. We know she cannot be a direct ancestor as, well... yeah, that. But she is only one of several connections to the trilogy. The rebel game maker Plutarch, another playwright name from I believe Roman times, last name Heavensby, had an entire hall in his ancestry. Yep, Heavensby Hall. Oh, and let's not forget an ancestor of his.
Hilarious Heavensby.
What a name. Very few didn't catch this, but enough to mention. Lucky Flickerman? You know, like Caesar Flickerman? I suppose Lucky's the one who started this nice long line of Hunger Games hosts with larger-than-life personalities. Well, at least 3, I would guess. Based on the time between the prequel and the first book, I would wager Caesar is the grandson of Lucky. Maybe his son, but that seems like a stretch unless Lucky had more children after the one mentioned here. I cannot believe that absolutely no one I watched talked about this. Tigris is Snow's cousin. I'm sorry, do y'all not remember Tigris from Mockingjay Part 2? Yes, this woman is Snow's older cousin. Tigris was the kindest and sweetest person in Snow's life. What on earth happened to get where she ended up? That's a story I might need. I bet it's heartbreaking. I mean, you see right at the end of the prequel that she's realizing who Snow is turning out to be. Perhaps there'll be some mention of her in the new book. Now this was not an exhaustive list, and in a sense it's subjective too, as some reactors don't post their entire reaction, and others maybe just didn't say some of these out loud. But I do have to wonder that if I could survey a much larger group of first-time viewers, how many of these would end up remaining on the list? If you've only seen the films, let me know if you missed any of these yourself. If you've both read and watched the series, let me know if I missed anything. I look forward to engaging with y'all in the comments. Major shout out and thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon. They're already awesome, but especially recently with having Baby Geek, my content has gone down significantly. So thank you for sticking around and continuing to support. It means so much. If you'd like to support and also be a part of this wonderful community and get perks like access to Discord, voice chat during community streams, maybe even a Christmas card depending on the tier, check out patreon.com/TheGeekApprentice. And finally, special thanks to my champions in the Hylian Knight tier, Joking Batman, Geek Mom, Lorulian Sheep, McToppler, and Sören. But anyway, that's all for today. Happy Hunger Games month, and may the odds be ever in your favor.